I'm just a sweet transvestite from transsexual Transylvania. Why don't you?
Cult films. These are films which garner lots of love and attention from a small, focused group of fans, no matter how campy, silly, trashy, poorly made, provocative, or exploitative they may be. These films can be vastly different, ranging from misunderstood artistic masterpieces to horrible messes that select people have come around to enjoying. In this video essay, I plan to explore the impact that cult films have had on people outside of entertainment, and explore some of the biggest categories of cult films to figure out what makes them so loved. First, what is camp? Well, the way I describe it is as an exaggerated style that filmmakers use to emphasize the self-awareness of what is happening on screen.
It's just a jump to the left.
Many times that ends up coming from the performances, which are purposefully over the top, but it can also come from any aspect of the film. Camp is a vital part of many cult films, whether it was the filmmaker's intention or not. One of my favorite cult films, and one that has received a ton of cult acclaim, is the 2009 horror comedy Jennifer's Body.
Why don't you just come by my place?
Well, this is random.
This isn't really your house, is it?
We can play mommy and daddy.
No way.
When the film came out, it wasn't particularly well received. It barely made back its budget, and it got many mixed reviews, with lots of people totally missing the satirical and campy elements, even going as far as calling it dumb. However, many moviegoers since are able to recognize the film's strong feminist and LGBTQ themes and deconstructions of how sex, nudity, and beauty are viewed in films and in real life, and it can now be viewed as the smart, meaningful, and fun film that it is. And oh boy, is it fun.
Fly? She's just hovering. It's not that impressive.
It is an absolute blast to watch, and much of that is due to the nature of the film's campy approach to the performances and the overall tone.
And besides, you know what? You should be happy for me because I am having the best day since, like, Jesus invented the calendar.
Jesus didn't invent the calendar.
Whatever.
Each performance is played up to the point where you kind of can't help but smile at the craziness of it all.
You hear me, you bastard? I'll cut off your nutsack and nail it to my door! Like one of those lion door knockers rich folks got! That will be your balls!
However, the self-aware nature of the filmmaking in general lends to the campiness as well, with the early 2000s pop rock music that elevates its energy and that high school teen girl vibe, the ridiculous character decisions and plotlines that exist purely to aid the film's message or its entertainment value, and editing choices that emphasize the comedic contrast between the film's very different genres.
And those guys from Low Shoulder? Totally evil. They're basically like agents of Satan with really awesome haircuts.
Strangely enough, another film that comes to my mind in a somewhat similar vein is But I'm a Cheerleader. This 1999 cult classic is a straight-up comedy that holds no punches when it comes to its levels of irony and satire.
And I am passing off the one of you. Andre, you may pack your bags.
It also uses camp to the highest degree, incorporating it in the production design, the costumes, and even the casting.
I myself was once a gay. Now I'm an ex-gay, Megan.
It's totally ironic, but also genuinely heartwarming, and it uses over-the-top homophobic characters and settings to get across its wonderful message that love is love.
Congratulations, liars. You know who you are, and you know who you want. Ain't nobody gonna change that shit.
The film was poorly received upon release, and it still hasn't really become as widely enjoyed as I believe it should. It still holds a 42% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes, which is a crime if you ask me. I mean, not that Rotten Tomatoes is a particularly reputable rating source, but still, the film was deemed to be dumb, like Jennifer's Body, and too heavy-handed with its social commentary. However, for cult fans of this film, that's what really makes it work. It is unflinching and unstoppable when it comes to getting its message across, and it uses its campiness to make it all just a joy to watch. Without that campiness, it might have ended up being the heavy-handed, dumb satire that some already claim it to be. Similarly, if Jennifer's Body were lacking these campy elements, it would just become a straight-up horror movie that almost certainly would not be considered a cult film today. It's this blending of horror and campy comedy that makes this film interesting, fun, and more digestible with its surprisingly deep and important themes. Now, all of this being said, there are many cult films that are campy by complete accident. One of my favorite examples of this is the film Sleepaway Camp.
Hiya, Angela. How's it going?
I'm sure that at some level the filmmakers knew that they were making something campy, but the acting and the way that the entire film feels, from the music to the editing, just make it so much campier than I believe was ever intended.
Answer me, Angela! Answer me! God damn it! Answer me!
What the hell's going on
The
here?
little bitch won't answer me! She never answers me!
You right, Angela? Meg, I want to see you in my shack right after swim period. Now get back to your post.
The performances are so awful that nearly every line delivery becomes a laughingstock, making the film 100 times more fun than it would be otherwise.
Hey, girls. Let's not forget to thank Angela for getting Meg in trouble. I didn't do anything. You never do shit.
And that enjoyment of Sleepaway Camp's legitimately bad filmmaking choices leads us perfectly into the next category of cult films.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark. Oh, hey,
A cinema of garbage. These films are unarguably poorly made, but for some reason, people love them. The Room is the most famous example of this that I can think of, being genuinely terrible from start to finish. It's so incoherent that I don't really remember what happened at all, even though I watched it sometime last year.
I'm gonna ask you again, Denny. Where's my money?
However, it's so awful that it has this irresistible charm that makes the film's quality loop back on itself, becoming extremely entertaining again, though not how Tommy Wiseau intended.
You sure about that?
Things like performances that seem cardboard or far too over the top,
You think girls like to cheat like guys do?
sets that look fake and are clearly reused, dialogue that sounds robotic and totally unrealistic.
Of course, what do you think? They already put my ideas into practice. The bank saves money, and they are using me, and I am the fool.
I still love you.
Music choices that are out of place, the weirdest, funniest, and most uncomfortable sex scenes of all time, the list goes on. However, there are lots of films that aren't nearly as incompetently made that I would throw into this very broad category as well. Maybe not so bad it's good, but trashy.
No, in L.A.
LA.
Where is that?
We'd get crushed.
Not
Smog. Can't see.
Climb a tall tree.
Lousy traffic.
Love to walk.
No culture.
Grooves.
My favorite example is the film Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. This is truly one of the most insane films I've ever had the pleasure of watching.
Move your ass out of the way, son. Son of a bitch, get the hell out of there!
It's well shot, it has excellent music, it has beautiful set design and costumes, and everything in the film has a purpose.
In the long run.
However, it is totally incoherent. I cannot even begin to describe what happens in this film. I don't understand it. You just need to see it to believe it.
The way in the long run. Will there be someone?
Nothing in the film makes sense. Things just happen. Characters come and go and they change on a whim. There's almost nothing to grab onto except for the film's insanity. But oh my god, is it a lot of fun. And like I briefly mentioned a moment ago, it's also important to know that the film isn't aimless. It has a purpose. Everything in this film is made the way it is to get their message across. Like many films that are received poorly upon release and then loved years later, this film is a satire on the music industry and Hollywood, as well as the conventions of what makes a great film. Sure, it may have an incoherent story, a lot of nudity and violence, so you might deem it as trashy, but that's the point. In fact, this film ties in perfectly with the next category as well.
You sure?
As sure as sure can be.
Exploitation films rose to popularity in the 1970s with films that would use trends or provocative content to try and bring an audience to a theater. The main draw of these films was to see something that was considered taboo. While some of these purely exploitative films have become cult hits, that's not what I want to focus on. My focus here is on exploitative films that use their provocative nature to make a point and to deconstruct the exploitation genre usually, and how those films have been cemented as cult classics. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls is most definitely one of those. It totes around sex, drugs, and violence, but its point is that all of these things are often at the center of Hollywood and the media and are used to make money for films with no actual substance. That is the substance of Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. That's what makes it a truly incredible experience. Not only is it insane and a lot of fun, but everything has a point, everything has a purpose. That's why I can't consider it poorly made, even though I can see how it can be considered trashy. Paul Verhoeven's 1995 film Showgirls does a very similar thing to this and was also poorly received upon release. In fact, it was a total flop. I find it hard to believe that people didn't recognize the brilliant satire of this film, considering that it was made by Paul Verhoeven, one of the masters of satirical film with works like RoboCop and Total Recall under his belt. Showgirls takes the word excess to a whole new level. However, it's all there to show that this excess is a very negative thing and that people will do terrible things in order to gain it. In the end, it's all material and they've lost everything that truly matters. Sure, Showgirls has a lot of nudity, but it's there to poke fun at the exploitation genre and the obsession that elites stereotypically have with it. Yeah, Showgirls has a lot of sex, but it is the most over-the-top and hilarious sex in any film I have ever seen, clearly showing how performative it all becomes in this excessive world. And on top of that, to tie it all back, the performances are extremely campy and lead to some hilarious line deliveries that the film would not be the same without.
Back east. From where back east? Different places.
The Doom Generation is another film that I'd include in this category. I watched it in preparation for making this video essay, and oh my god, I'm so glad I did. It is absolutely magnificent. It's a new favorite of mine.
Some nachos?
It focuses around 3 young adults who go on an accidentally violent and very purposefully sex-filled rampage around a strangely apocalyptic world. They constantly encounter people who exemplify archetypes from cinema and stereotypes from the real world, and they're eventually chased by them with murderous intent. It's a hell of a lot of fun and it's a wild ride, but what really drives it all home is the film's ending.
Leave her alone! Dan, please fire up our favorite song.
The film goes from being insanely silly, ridiculous, and fun to horrifically disgusting in a matter of seconds. It makes you look back on your enjoyment of the film leading up to that point differently.
To the Republic! Wicked stand! One nation under God!
The whole film uses sex and violence to express the angry culture of the 90s, especially from repressed and controlled teens. It goes from the most exciting and entertaining outburst of directed rage into a cautionary tale in its final scene. Oh, and on top of that, guess what? It has campy performances.
Guilt is for married, old people.
You're incredible. You aren't even human, are you? You're like a life support system for a cock.
It is a non-stop great time.
God, Bruce. I'm sorry.
Up until that ending, I guess. Okay, moving away from the actual aspects of the film itself for a moment, The way that an audience interacts with a film can be a major aspect of what defines it as a cult film. Take the Rocky Horror Picture Show, for example, one of the most famous and definitive cult films out there. What really sets Rocky Horror apart is the level of audience participation that is encouraged during screenings of the film.
So, come up to the lab and see what's on the slab. I see you shiver with anticipation.
There is an entire script for people to follow along with so that they can shout out funny responses to basically every line of the film at the correct times. There are even props that the audience uses, like a sponge, for example, which is thrown when Columbia says,
"You're like a sponge. You take, and drain others of their love and emotion."
It's truly a one-of-a-kind phenomenon. I've never seen another film do it like this. And while most cult films don't have this level of participation, many still get some level of it, whether it's planned or not. Many of them have an audience full of people who quote the film's most iconic moments with pride as it plays. Many also get explosive applause from a moment that they typically wouldn't in other settings, like the delivery of Groovy in Evil Dead 2. Another really important aspect of cult films that you will have picked up on by now is that they aren't hits when they're first released. Typically, they're misunderstood or they only become entertaining or interesting with a distance in between the era in which they were conceived and the current environment. Jennifer's Body, But I'm a Cheerleader, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and Showgirls weren't appreciated for their use of satire at the time, or they weren't even recognized as satire at all. However, being able to look at them retrospectively with the context of the world that they were poking fun at, it's clear as day now, and certain groups of fans are obsessed with that satirical commentary. All of this talk about cult films leads me to wonder about films that we're watching right now that could end up being cult films in the future. I believe that there are two films released within the past couple of years that are very clear potential cult classics. The first is Babylon. This film is a satirical comment on Hollywood and excess, similarly to Showgirls and Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, and it houses some really fun sequences and amazing production design and costumes that just make all of the insanity a joy to watch. This film already has a pretty solid base of dedicated fans, but I don't think it's quite big or dedicated enough to be considered a cult film yet. Give it some time though, and I think it will be. Beau is Afraid, the newest film by Ari Aster, is another that I think will be seen as a masterpiece in years to come, by a select group of fans at least. Again, this film already has a dedicated following, but it needs to grow and become more cultish as the years go on. The film's totally absurd and hilarious while also being genuinely unsettling and horrific at times. Like Babylon, it hasn't been treated too well by critics or the box office, but it has an undeniable charm to it that just seems like it signifies the makings of a cult film to me. Alright, so I've alluded to this at a lot of points in this video essay, but now I actually want to dive into it. Cult films can have a massive impact on people, especially in their small cult groups, but even on society as a whole at a broader level. Cult films allow people to participate in something that's truly unique. They allow very specifically like-minded people to gather together and obsess over something that they love. They provide a strangely tightly knit community that's extremely fun to be a part of. But in addition to that, they can also be used to point out issues in our society and discuss them in ways that have never been done before. Jennifer's Body deals with sexuality, womanhood, and self-confidence like no other film I've seen. But I'm a Cheerleader uses satire and irony to comment on the ridiculousness of homophobia and how people should just be free to love the people that they love. One film that I didn't mention, but I should because it spawned the entire idea for this video essay, is Hedwig and the Angry Inch. It deals with sexuality and gender in a wholly unique way, acting for a majority of its runtime as a trans pride film, and ending with the protagonist seemingly accepting their non-binary gender, which was something that wasn't really a term at the time. It's all about the ideas of being who you are and loving who you love, which are things that are still extremely important today. All in all, whether it's finding people who like the same kinds of absurd comedy that you do, or seeing people like yourself be accepted, cult films can help people be themselves and accept themselves for who they are. They can show people that they don't need to change for others. It's okay to be different. In fact, it's good to be different. I mean, that's why we love these cult films, right? Because they're just so wonderfully different.